Hello and welcome back to Pseudo Gameplay TV for another character intro and analysis. Today we have a rather interesting character, a newcomer to Marvel Comics, in the form of Miss Marvel, specifically the interpretation presented by Kamala Khan. Now, Kamala Khan, again, is a newer member to Marvel Comics in general. She did first debut in 2014, specifically in February-March area of 2015. Now, Kamala Khan doesn't have a laundry list of abilities as much as some of the other characters that we've looked at. She is most well known for being an Inhuman, and particularly her ability to shapeshift or change her size in ways that are kind of drastic, which we'll showcase a little bit as a part of her character introduction here today. In the comic, she also has somewhat of a regenerative healing factor that is not particularly showcased in her interpretation and appearance in this game. But let's have a look at a couple of her attacks. She is, I guess you could say, a little more hip to the jive, and uses very young slang, you could really say. So that's kind of showcased in the names of her different attacks. So her first attack is Embiggen, where the character enlarges both of their fists and crushes the enemies in front of her. So it has some merit and some application use there. Her second attack is the Sweet Combo attack, which is a flurry of punches that finishes with an uppercut. And yes, this is one of those style of attacks that you can mash the button to continue to use. The third ability that she gains and has access to is the Super Face Kick, where she performs a lunging forward kick with an enlarged foot. And so you'll notice that all of her attacks so far really kind of revolve around her hands and her feet. So she's a very melee style combatant, but not in the conventional way in comparison with some of the other characters we've looked at that specialize in melee. And her final attack that she gains access to is the giant foot spinning thing, where she performs a tornado kick with the same or a similar enlarged foot to what we saw with the Super Face Kick. And this is another attack that can be mashed to continue using. Now, I believe it's pretty stationary. There might be some directional input you can use to influence it. But regardless, she's a very non-conventional melee fighter. So we do have a synergy team built around her a little bit here with the inclusion of Spider-Man, Drax, and these are to focus on all of Miss Marvel's unique synergies. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into an Infinity Rift and showcase the use of Kamala Khan and her interpretation of Miss Marvel in this game. So, as I mentioned earlier, Kamala Khan is a melee-based fighter, but she doesn't have to get in up front and close with her assailants as you would think she would. So her standard attacks are a threefold, where she will sweep her arms and legs out in front of her in kind of these massing arcs. Her heavy attack has a decent amount of range to it, where she will kind of extend her arms out in front of her and kind of palm the opponents. In terms of her aerials and jumping, she does have a mid-air jump, which is useful for traversing some terrain. And her aerial attack is very, very technical, where she will jump down and then kind of extend her leg out in front of her. So you do want to keep that in mind. It's not as all-encompassing as other aerial attacks that we've seen made use of. But it does a significant amount of damage to grunts and to shields or stagger bars if you can manage to land it properly. So do keep that in mind. So let's jump in and start looking at some of her in particular attacks. Her first attack is Embiggen, where she, again, kind of slams her arms down on top of the people in front of her while yelling Embiggen. out against those people as well. So has a very large area of effect type attack and is practical at the very least. Now her second attack, the sweet combo attack, is one that can be mashed, and this will just kind of unleash a fury of blows out in front of her, and you did see there at the end it does finish with the uppercut. Now you do have to keep in mind that that is one that you mash to use, and it applies a decent amount of stagger pressure as well. Now the super face kick, you do not have to start right in close with your opponents, but it does, like, Kamala is a very hard and heavy hitting character. So, I mean, you just saw her obliterate 3 different stagger bars there. And that can set up quite nicely into her fourth and final attack, which is this giant foot spinning thing. And no, I'm not making that up. That is the legitimate name of that attack. And it took out the stagger bars of all of these heavies just in the immediate vicinity. So it's quite potent. Now, in terms of her ultimate attack, you do want to place yourself in the middle of a group of people, as she will kind of stamp, 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 and now you'll see every single heavy in any sort of vicinity had their stagger bar completely obliterated. So she's a bit quirky and odd in terms of actually using, but she's incredibly useful. Because you saw there, that took over half of that heavy stagger bar in just one single use of the super face kick. So she does hit quite hard. And it's just, she just does massive, massive amounts of damage to her opponents. So, not to be underestimated or taken lightly. It looks like I've ran out of my stamina there for just a moment. But yes, Kamala Khan hits very, very, very hard. And you saw that practically obliterated this entire heavy's stagger bar. And then again, if it doesn't knock them out, it deals massive, massive amounts of damage. So she will certainly make very quick work of her opponents. Now the one downside is she's a tank, but she's not quite, I don't want to say tanky enough. But she does take quite a bit of damage because she is a very upfront and in-your-face and personal type character. But very, very bursty and incredibly powerful. So I would recommend Kamala Khan as a member of your team, especially if you're needing to burst down some fights a little bit quicker than what you would expect. As a matter of fact, her and Hulk on the same team could be quite devastating if you're needing some high damage output in a short period of time. But that's my analysis of Kamala Khan and Miss Marvel in this game. We'll be back in a couple of days to look at the next character on the list, which, if I'm not mistaken, should be Nightcrawler. So thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you in the next one. Take care.